All right, I'd like to open up this meeting of Thursday, December 21st, 2017. If we could all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Go around and do introductions. Peter, if you can start.
Peter White, Nottingham.
Tony Dumas, Select Board.
Michael Keister.
Mishka Haddock, Chair.
Carol Martin.
Erin Maslow, Carrie Lee.
And with us, Chris Stonerdale. So, all right. We are going to basically have a discussion about the first draft of the town budget and review what was presented the last time. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to jump right in and ask them. Chris has offered up his time to be here and answer any of those questions. So.
Chris, was there a select board meeting since 2 weeks ago?
Yeah. Monday.
Yes, thank you for letting us have the scouts participate that evening. That was
Happy to have it. Either of them 18?
what's that?
Either of them 18?
No, not yet.
Cold, so you might want to distance yourself. a little.
Yeah, right. Oh.
Sorry to hear that.
Actually, Chris, while we're waiting, do you want to just mention some of the things we talked about Monday, like the consolidate shopping for the phone service thing, toddler gym stuff, just things that, things that we're going to spend this year and not next year, anything like that that'll impact the next draft?
Yeah, we don't have, I don't think any of it finalized yet. We'll be making some small equipment purchases over the next couple of weeks out of police and fire and pulling some money out of the 18 budget, speeding up purchases that we were gonna make anyway. And we may contract for work in the town clerk's office, which shows up in the 2018 budget as well. If we purchase or contract any of those things, we can do what's called encumbering the money, which means we'll spend 2017 money in 2018, and we'll end up doing the same things we would do. We'll just do them a little faster and present a smaller budget for March. So, your second draft will capture all that. It's probably $20,000 or so. It's not a huge budget number, but it'll get us. We'll put that equipment in use faster and keep the budget smaller for next year.
What is going on with this planning board planner position? What exactly is that?
Well, we don't know yet. We know that we're gonna need some technical help from the planning board. But we don't know if it's gonna be a position or a contract.
Is this part of that engineering thing that you were talking about with regards to like
No, this is
designing
part
roads?
of the change in the, what used to be the building inspector position that also supported the planning board and the planner-ish role. We've pulled money out of the building inspection side, because that, the people doing that job are not doing that planning board support now, so we split it up. We've come back around and have something available for the planning board for technical help, that we don't have a person hired or anything like that, but we need to be ready to do that.
So in the interim, who's the building inspector?
Oh, we have a building inspector.
But he's just not doing the planning board portion of
Correct.
of what Paul used to do?
Correct.
Okay. And then wasn't Paul also health something?
Yeah, we have a health officer.
We do have a health officer.
Yeah, but we took that from full-time to part-time, so need to catch up some of that work, and it moves line items in doing that. It's a net savings.
So where does the health officer fall in then?
It is one of our building inspectors. I think we have, funds in here for that function, I think. Or did we, we made that go away. We rolled that, we used to have two different people we had a health inspector and a building inspector, two different people, like 3 years ago or so, and we had a separate budget and all that stuff for it. We rolled that into the inspection department last year, or the year before. Those costs they're kind of underneath the building inspector. They're hidden in there. What used to be a stipend is now just part of an hourly wage when it comes along.
So that's part of the
So that's part of
line 229 salary. Covers the health inspector hours as well.
229 is emergency management. No, it has
Oh, I'm
nothing
sorry.
to do with,
No, I'm. one
It would be
section
like
20.
215, right?
Yeah.
yeah, that's in the,
216.
Full-time.
yeah, it'll be in 216.
Okay.
One of basically our backup building inspector is also our health inspector.
So,
So those wages will show up in there anytime he's doing either of those kinds of work, it'll be in that same line.
so this shows up as a huge increase under that category, but then you also have an increase under the planning board planner position.
Yeah.
Well, it's
So-
if you look at the line above, the
That's offset by
full-time
line
salary
215,
is gone.
where a full-time position goes
Right.
away.
Okay.
You gotta see that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to,
There are some tax and benefit implications for a change like that, but those are scattered across the other line.
the community center building maintenance there for town security upgrades or whatever, is that just being proactive?
It's the town clerk's office?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a,
you haven't received any kind of grants or anything?
well, we've had some unhappy customers and, a couple times where our employees and elected officials have been less than comfortable
Okay.
where they are. Never anything reached a serious level. We have panic buttons in there, and we haven't had to employ those, but this is definitely let's do something before.
Before we regret it. Good, okay.
Yeah, so it's partly that, and it's partly that's where we don't move a lot of cash, but
Yeah, I'm sure it's mostly
all the
checks.
cash that we do moves through there, with very little exception, so. Most of that business is now check and credit card business, but it's gonna be perceived to be a source of cash, and that
Right.
is just as bad as a real source of cash.
Absolutely. I had some notes in here from the previous time regarding the solar planning that you guys went through. And one of the questions was, was it included in the CIP? And I think you guys just had a meeting, right? Is that part of the CIP and recycling it
It
or
is,
whatever?
it is mentioned, there's no real detail around it yet. Let's see if I get the right page for this. I've got my pages all scrambled here.
Probably 2023.
Yeah, but they aren't numbered.
2024, we reached the end of we reached the point at which we can buy out the lease. And what I suspect will make sense at that point is that we will bond a purchase of the panels at that time, and spread that cost over 5 or 10 years. Save some money. We'll then, once we buy them, we get all the power from them for free. And the savings in electricity will more than pay for the bond costs at that point.
Great.
And then years 20 through 40, it's all free, or whatever year that is. But
Yeah.
It will not make sense not to do that the way the deal is structured. It's the power, the cost of the power will make that a must do
Mm-hmm.
in 2024. Not a bad thing, but it's just,
Yeah.
we know it's coming.
The cemeteries, it says fences, is, how much fencing for $8,000, for
Well, that's kind of a
$16,000?
plug at this point. We're waiting for some sharper pencil estimates from the trustees on what it's gonna take, but we have a lot of downed iron fencing. The old cemetery's got some down in the back, the trees have fallen on it, and we've got several years of deferred maintenance on that, so by the time we get to the next draft of this budget, I think we'll have a harder number. It's kind of a guess, but we've been putting it off. We need to get caught up on that kind of stuff with cemeteries. It's in the CIP for this fence repair. We need some road work. They'd like to do some signage, perhaps new road work. There's several years worth to do.
If I may, the line's 262 with the plow for $65,000 plow. Why is that part of the capital improvement plan instead of being a line item?
Which line did you say, 262?
262, it just says miscellaneous,
Highway
and
miscellaneous.
has a 65.
It is in the capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan just outlines what the plans for purchases and projects are and where they're gonna be paid for. The board may move that item to pull it out of the operating budget and look to take the money out of the highway vehicle reserve fund. We haven't decided that yet. Whether it could stand alone as its own on the warrant as well. It's in here because we know we need to do it. We may pull it out later, but that item is in the CIP as a identified need.
Is there a reserve account for highway equipment like that?
Highway vehicles, yes. It's got 75,000 in it,
So
I think, right now.
we spent it on this, then that would be pretty depleted then, huh?
Yeah, we typically, over the last couple of years, we've always put something in it. The last couple of years, that's been 75,000 a year. The CIP maps that out and pretty much covers the cost of this and our dump trucks over the next 7 or 8 years. We do have a couple other equipment purchases that aren't accounted for with that fund.
But did you just say there's only 75,000 in it now, even though we put 75 in?
Yeah, we bought a truck 2 years ago and pretty much emptied it out. We had been putting 50 in until a couple of years ago. And when you get the CIP, you'll see that it, at about that rate, we'll be able to replace the dump trucks that we have at a pretty decent pace. If our guesses about when they die are accurate.
Yeah, right.
At the end of this year, we should have 152,000.
Okay, so it's 2 years of 75, yeah, so
Yeah.
we bought a truck 2 years ago, and put 75 in twice, and that gets
Yeah.
us to 150.
So if you used any money from that fund for this truck, does that conflict with what the CIP says, or?
What do we have that modeled on, Mike, is that
Which truck are we looking at?
the 1 ton for 2018? I think we planned on putting that in this budget, not out of the warrant. I mean, not out of the reserve.
65,000 worth?
Yep,
Yep,
that says operating budget next to it.
it does.
Yeah, so we did not plan on taking that out of the reserve fund to begin with. Doesn't mean that the voters or the board can't change their mind, but it won't, if it stays here, it won't impact the longer term plan for the vehicle fund.
And that's what's in the highway miscellaneous line 262.
Correct.
And that represents the bulk of the increase in the budget this year, right?
Well, there's some pretty significant increase in the highway salary line here.
Pardon me?
The salary line for the highway is increased as well by
Yeah.
a significant amount, 32,000.
And that's still on hold, right? Trying to find out Public Works.
Yeah, we're modeling this on hiring both a public works director and another full-time operator laborer for highway. That's what's causing that jump.
But Chris, have you determined where in the year you're planning to bring that person on board? Like after March?
Probably,
So,
yeah.
so potentially a quarter of a year's salary has already been calculated out of that line?
Yeah, as we get, I'll go back, I don't remember what I built this on, but I'll check that before the second draft to make sure I don't have a full year in there.
Thanks.
The highway department, line 247, where you've got hired equipment plowing. 15 expenditure of 14,000, 16 expenditure of 13, and then suddenly a 17 expenditure of 60. What was the reasoning behind that big
Yeah,
jump?
last year, last year was rough, plowing wise. January was quiet, and then February all hell broke loose. We didn't have enough hands to keep all of our trucks busy, and ramped up our use of private contractors in a couple places. The lines, salary part-time, hired equipment plowing, And even the overtime lines, they're all muddied, and you really have to look at them in a group to get a good sense of the full picture of what we're doing for plowing. And we had to hire for a few of those events last year. We had to bring in a lot of extra contract help. We started off December without enough people, and it was a rough start, and a lot of holiday and extended event storms, if I remember correctly. I think I blacked most of that out, but
Yeah, well, equipment maintenance went up, everything.
yeah, the big hit this year on line 250 is the grader engine. We rebuilt the grader engine in August to the tune of $32,000, I think. And also had a big failure with the loader in late August. Not as expensive, but.
So when you guys do this, I'm just trying to get a feel of it. This is minus 71. For 35.
Back to that hired equipment plowing line, is part of that increase due to the fact that we don't have Johnny driving? So we'll need to have another
That's the
driver?
kind of thing that will happen, yes. That's not reflected much here, because this is looking back, and Johnny was here last winter.
Right,
The same thing is pretty much going on right now. We're down one full-time slot right now, so we'll be using more part-time, what we call here part-time labor, and more contract labor, and less out of the full-time line. Because we're down ahead.
is it expected when you do find the Public Works Director that person will also be a driver?
They'll be involved, I would not expect them to be driving a regular route. I would expect them to be filling more of a plug-in role or a floating role, not a standing route per se. There was one section of town that John Farnell pretty much did on his own that we now have a contractor doing. But it's hard to do both at the same time. I would not expect whatever we call the leader, the Public Works Director, I would not expect to be on a regular route, one of our key 4 or 5 routes. I'd expect them to be working the pit, supporting here, filling in holes where we have them. But I wouldn't expect that to be 1/5 of our route coverage.
Okay.
Are you back to being fully staffed at the transfer station?
Oh, we were until a week ago. Looking for a few extra hours?
Yeah, just what I need. I can work between midnight and 6 a.m., sure.
curiosity, the financial admin department, there's a whole bunch of lines that says.
Yeah, this whole section is a hybrid of a few different functions. Tax assessing, tax collection, bookkeeping, they're all pieces of it are all getting muddled in here. And what we asked the tax collector to give us a budget, tell us what you need to operate. There's no standalone tax collector budget per se, it's all in here, so that's just this may be all the tax collector's request, it may be a combination of the other office and tax collecting combined.
Okay, so it's just financial slash tax.
Yep. The outliers here, well, this year, every few years, we have to have an outside audit of our retirement liabilities. And this year coming up, we have to do that. Our regular auditor can't do that, so we have to hire that out. That's that line 49. And the Board of Selectmen is going to have the opportunity to let the tax collector take credit cards for tax payments if they so choose. And that software is built in here as well. They won't.
Their fee to the customer for that?
Yes, very much so. It's there's an upfront cost to the town to set it up, but after that we carry no cost for it. Any of the processing and all those fees are paid by the taxpayer or the credit card user.
So the town doesn't make money off of
No,
using cards?
no.
Nor do we lose money.
No, yeah, we don't make, well, to the extent we may collect more, then great, but, no, we don't make money. It's an expensive way to pay your taxes, but some people may choose to do it, for whatever reason. We get a few requests for it, something a lot of towns are doing. Occasionally we get requests for it, just a service improvement. There, eventually, we get to the point where you don't have to come to town hall if you don't need to, if you don't want to, you can do it from home.
Maybe they
You
want
can
the,
just write a check from home now, and that works fine too.
I say they may want the bonus reward points.
Yeah, that actually is a motivator for some people.
That doesn't work if you're having to pay the service charge.
Or, for cash flow purposes
Yeah.
or whatever, people need to do it. Not paying your property tax comes with a pretty steep interest rate, so.
So you're gonna charge a fee on top of the property taxes for somebody using their credit card?
Yep.
And will it be a flat fee, or does it depend on a credit card? Like American Express is 4.5%, whereas MasterCard is 2%, or?
No, it's I think it's a percentage with a minimum. I'm sure it's really between the vendor and the customer. We don't even handle the money. We're blind to it. It's a cost that gets layered on top. I think it's a flat fee. I mean, a percentage with a minimum. But I'm not certain.
Charge the merchant or the town, or just charge?
No, we don't have. There's no merchant fees like you'd see in a retail context. They're doing just fine charging the customer, but and it's less paper for us to move around.
On line 49, I just was trying to clarify that a little bit. Is line 49 is the auditor fee for the retirement liability?
Yep.
I know
Yes.
on the school district, we hired actuarial to go out there and try to look at the liability, and then, is that what this is, or is this a full-blown audit of the whole?
No, this is both our usual annual audit
And that, okay,
and that's GASB 45, I think it's called.
yep,
That retirement liability audit, which is required every third year.
okay.
And it's a specialized thing that either our.
For the valuation, okay.
Right, to check what you're carrying for your liability on the balance sheet.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing anything. So we have the same thing coming up. And we spoke with our auditor the other day, and there's a new GASB coming in that's going to, right now, the entire valuation amount is not booked, so I think it's GASB 75. It's gonna cause you to have to book the whole whole liability,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, there's not a big consequence for us, and whatever that number is,
It just is what it is, and
what
it
is,
just,
yeah.
it kind of makes your financials look not great, but it's not an actual cash outflow.
Right.
I was kind of wondering if we shared the actuarial, if there might be a cost, but probably not. We pay about the same, and I think we're on a similar cycle.
Well, where it's different underlying liabilities, I bet we wouldn't save much, but it's worth having a conversation about, but, you know, everything else is two separate worlds, it's gonna look like two separate audits to the,
Yeah, they would do, I'm sure they do two separate valuations and everything, so,
but we could certainly shop it together
yeah.
and see if we got somebody to give us a deal. If you're up in 2018, we can talk to the office about it.
Okay.
Do you know if is the whole SAU going together on that, or is it
No, we're all different.
we're all different, okay?
We want it because we want the unqualified, unmodified report. I'm not sure that all the other districts, it's a choice, but you won't get a clean audit report if you don't have it. So Nottingham School District elected to do it. I'm not sure if the other two have or not.
Any changes on the, you have a list of warrant articles here.
Did we go through those before? Because I don't
We
remember
didn't, no.
talking about them.
And that's why I wanted to just quickly go through them and see what they represent.
Let's see, for financial implications, well, do you want me to translate what all these are?
Yeah, I mean, like the highway construction, reconstruction, what is
That's
that warrant?
what we typically use for a major single road reconstruction project each year, carve out the expenses for that project, approve them independently of the regular highway budget. In 2017, that was Lakeview Drive.
Lincoln Drive?
Lakeview.
Oh, Lakeview.
Yeah. And we have, for the last several years, had a project of about that cost that is kind of the biggest project for the year, reconstructing a old road typically. Let me come back around to highway, but that's what that is. And that,
So this is above and beyond shim and seal coat?
correct.
Okay.
And much of this is contracted out, not all of it, but much of it. Fire breathing apparatus is the scuba tanks for the firefighters. This is the first of a 2-year proposed appropriation. We have about $150,000 worth of that stuff that we need to replace. That's too much for one budget year, so we're gonna buy some in late 2018 and some in early 2019. They'll all be the same vintage, they'll all be the same equipment, but we'll buy them out of 2 different fiscal years.
Right.
They are certifiable or licensed, or I don't know whatever the word is, but they're legal for 15 years, and the stuff we have is out of time, will be in 2018. There may be some grant support for that, though, fingers crossed. Highway vehicle CRF, Capital Reserve Fund, that is the savings account for highway vehicles that we had talked about earlier. Fire vehicle CRF is the same thing for fire vehicles. You'll see that a year ago, that was $100,000. What's probably gonna be proposed this year is $25,000. That is to offset the cost of that breathing apparatus above. So what the fire department tries to do is keep about $100,000 in capital equipment costs each year, whether that's a full spend or throw it in the bank.
Right.
Try to keep that relatively constant. Revaluation CRF, we do this every year so that our 5-year property reassessment revaluation doesn't cost us $125,000 all at once. That's been very consistently, we know we can afford it for about that much, we set aside that much every year, but flattens out the cost. Invasive ETF is the invasive species lake protection. We spend about 6 of that each year, save about 4. We've been doing that for the last couple of years. That's the lake, the monitoring and the lakes. 300th birthday, capital reserve fund. There are 4 years left to get ready for that. Let's see, those are all the things that have a tax impact. Those are raise and appropriates, they come right off the tax bill. Below that dark line are things that are coming from other places. Ambulance operations, we have a fund for that. We just need the approval to spend from it as we put money into it each year. There's easement being paid for by the conservation fund, and that's actually very cheap. Contingency is the approval to take money from the fund balance to pay for employee retirement costs. We have people that retire, we owe them earned sick and vacation time. We don't budget for that. We just like to have a little bit of breathing room to dip into that if we need to. So like we had John Fernald retire this year, he had a bunch of vacation time. If the budget was real tight, we wouldn't have budgeted for that. We wouldn't be able to pay him. So we pay him, but we wouldn't have had the money to set aside for that. We've done that the last few years, but haven't needed it. So that's good.
Do you have a goal that you're looking to get that to?
That doesn't keep climbing. That's it. We don't use it. It goes back and it just sits in the fund balance. It doesn't accumulate. That's why we keep doing it every year.
Right.
We don't have 60,000 sitting there waiting.
Right.
That's the.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That is the best question to ask. So none of that has changed much since the last time we talked. The board is going to be talking about paving gravel roads, perhaps, and the cost implications of that. We just got some cost estimates on a couple things in the CIP. I think we're going forward with a more public discussion on the 8th. Is that right?
I believe so, yeah.
Not that they're doing anything secretively, they've just been trying to be very deliberate about when are we gonna do it so people can be there and be part of it. So that may have implications for that first warrant article. And how the board wants to approach that, if they wanna try and do something next year. That's where it would probably happen. So that one's presented as what we've done for the last several years. The board may decide to propose something different for 18.
Chris, when you talk about reconstruction and paving, did I understand correctly that we're pretty much done with reconstructing paved roads, and now we're moving into a period where we're going to be building the roads that are dirt roads that need to be paved roads?
I think the better way to say it is the worst of our road reconstruction projects are behind us. Everything has been reconstructed that needed it. I think you will see us shift to a little bit different maintenance method. We're gonna revise how we maintain the asphalt that we do have. Nothing dramatic, but we're gonna apply some different methodologies to that going forward. And much of what's in the CIP for the bigger projects, not maintaining the stuff we already have, but making future improvements, much of that is either bridge and culvert work or paving of gravel. So in the order in which we do that is not certain, but fortunately, the base of almost all of our asphalt roads is now in pretty good shape. It's relatively young. The surfaces need work, but the bases have essentially been reconstructed or newly built within the last 25 or 30 years.
Right. But when you're talking about paving gravel roads, you're really referring to actually construction project that puts in a
engineering the
a
road.
proper base under it. It's much more involved than just sending the paving crew out to smooth it and
Yeah,
pave it.
yes, you have to, in most cases, you have to dig up a lot of what's there, because what's there is full of organics and, you know, whatever flaws are built into the road for 200 years.
The big rocks near the surface that are gonna just poke right through the pavement if you just.
Right, all that stuff has to be corrected before you put asphalt on it, so, you know, I expect 6 to 12 inches of the top of the road to come off and be rebuilt when you put asphalt down, otherwise you're just throwing money away on the asphalt, so.
Now, have you been doing traffic studies to see where these gravel roads are so heavily used they need to be paved?
We did counts on all of the gravel roads that had been identified in the CIP as like, these are our worst or busiest. We did that this summer. Ledge Farm, Poor Farm, Mitchell, Cooper Hill, Stevens Hill. Those are Giles Dirt, but we didn't count Giles because it doesn't carry the traffic that the other ones do.
South Summer?
Mitchell, did I say Mitchell?
Yeah, South Summer?
Which one?
South Summer?
South Summer.
South Summer, we didn't count traffic on South Summer because it doesn't connect anything. It's pieces of it are gravel, but that's not on our top 5 at this point.
Are there gonna be betterment assessments to the residents along those roads, or how's that gonna be considered?
Betterment, you mean changes in tax assessment?
Well, the homes along those roads, sometimes some towns do betterment assessments if they're gonna pave the road for them.
I think it's a blanket, I can make this a blanket statement. Land values on gravel roads are discounted versus land on paved roads. So, there's a baked in discount on the land value. There's nothing on the home, there's no change in the assessment of the home, but, I guess that, I'm getting outside my depth, but I would assume that would change if a road went from gravel to dirt. The value of the underlying value of the land would be assessed differently.
You mean gravel to paved?
Correct, yeah, whatever I said. Yeah.
People living along these roads will probably see an increase in property taxes then.
Well, if your assessment goes up, then yes, you would see a change in taxes, yeah. I wanna say it's 5% of the land value, which in most cases is the land, not the house, so most of the value is in the house, and that wouldn't change. But don't take that too far, that's just what is my basic understanding of how we do it now. You would presume that there'd be some other change in value over time too, but I don't know what that looks like. Different, every location will be different.
All right, and you said January 8th is the public hearing?
I think
or
that's what we're looking at, yeah.
Presentation or whatever? For those that
Yeah,
might be affected?
I gotta confirm that we did pin that down, but we have a whole bunch of people that are waiting to come back and, and talk to the selectmen or hear what the selectmen are gonna do. And I have to notify all of them, but I don't wanna say the wrong date, so I think that's what it is.
I think that's what we talked about.
Okay.
I should add, Chris has been doing a lot of research and giving us homework too, into different, like, I don't know if this is the right way to say it, but analytics-driven approaches to road maintenance. Because apparently, statistically, it's more expensive to go after your worst roads every year. So every year, you're doing your most expensive work on a continual basis, where it makes more sense to maintain them while they're healthy than to re-engineer and rebuild them once they've fallen to pieces. Did I say that right?
Selectman Dooms has been doing the homework I've sent him.
That's it.
I haven't finished reading it all, but I'm getting it.
Yes.
No, that makes sense, so.
So we're hoping that using a proactive, I guess, approach like that is gonna translate to some long-term, better use of the money. I don't wanna say savings, but better use of the money long-term and better, more effective maintenance of our roads, so we get more longevity out of them. That's the hope anyways.
Good. All right. Anybody else have any other questions regarding the budget?
Just on the, fire truck, it looks like if there is a fire truck purchase that's coming from capital reserve, is that?
Yep.
Yeah, that's why they've been putting that money away.
How much is in that reserve right now?
Mike's got that right, it's
Do I
560,
do 525?
525? No, 5,
Fire rescue vehicle, CRF,
yeah,
525,
525 a year in 2016,
2017,
year in 2017?
right now.
Okay. 525?
And it's not gonna be a Quint, it's gonna be a more,
It's an engine.
yeah, a traditional vehicle.
All right. At one point, was it last year? Maybe 2 years ago, we had talked about the town's emergency fund. How are you on that? Isn't there like an allotment or like a disaster, whatever, I don't know how to call, what you called it, but there was some graph that you had created that showed, or
Are you talking about the percentage for cash flow, that amount that we should have in the bank?
right, something like that,
Fund
yeah.
balance, the big bank account, the big
Big
savings
bank, yeah,
account?
which was basically, you know, should anything happen, that we were liquid enough to be able to address things.
The fund balance right now, well, to finish this year is gonna stand at about 1.4 million. Sound right, 1.3 something?
Sounds familiar,
Something in
1.3
that.
and
We don't
change.
know, it's, you know, we haven't finished the year yet, but, which is probably in the 10 to 11% of the total appropriations range. What's recommended is that you be between 8 and 17%, and we're gonna be at 10 or 11, something like that.
Okay.
We just, as we covered last time I was here, we just used a big chunk of that to flatten out the tax rate. So it's gonna go down this year, regardless of whatever happens with surpluses or other money moves. The use of it for offsetting the tax rate will dwarf all that, so the fund balance will go down this year. But it's not, it's okay where it is.
It'll
it's
still
in
be
the
in the safe,
recommended
in
range.
the right margins.
Yeah, it's not big enough that we can do big projects with it. You know, sometimes you could look at a big project and say, we got the money in the bank, let's just take it out of the bank. We don't really have that kind of money.
Okay.
But we have enough that we don't have to borrow in anticipation of taxes, which is like the worst thing you can do is borrow money for 6 months while you're waiting for tax bills to come in.
Yeah,
We're not anywhere near there, so. It's suitable where it is.
All right. Anybody have anything else they wanna cover? Since we're in it, do you have any other general town updates that you needed to bring up?
Oh, thanks.
I think we pretty much covered all the things we talked about Monday.
Just had a general question about the state workforce housing guidelines now. Are we under any obligations under that, or any financial penalties or anything, or how does that affect Nottingham? Not at all?
No, not much at all. We don't fit the profile of, I haven't even studied up on that so long, because we don't fit the profile. There's been no consequences to us. There will be some effects to the change in the accessory dwelling unit law. That's whether people want to look at that as an affordable housing, workforce housing question or not. They're related, and we will see some impact from that, but nothing dramatic.
Sue, any school updates for us?
No.
Oh,
Yeah, you're good?
I think so.
We're good.
We're good.
Good. Everybody else good?
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks.
Thank you, you too. Merry Christmas.
We worked on our budget again last night, made some changes to it, again. And, I looked at it briefly today, so we'll be ready to present on that. We have the beginnings of the move-in numbers,
Mm-hmm.
and in and out. And the concern that I'm having with it is that I can't tell, looking at it, how much of the outs are within the system and how many of them are just maybe going from one school to the other. So within the system, it's hard to tell what's happening if people are just going out. Do you know what I mean? So we're trying to finesse that a little bit.
Out as in going from elementary to high school, or from Co-Brown to Dover?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of outs on Dover, but we don't know what that means. When I say a lot, 6, or 7. But where did they go? Did they move away? Did they go to homeschooling? Did they move to an alternative education program? Or did they go, did they head to Co-Brown? So we're trying to finesse that a little bit better. So it's a pretty macro study that's happening, and I kind of would like to see what we hit that line with. How many people moved in, that just literally moved in, and define it that way. And we'll show the other data as well, but I'm trying to understand it better, to be honest. So we're with that. We had the default budget last night. It was a 5.19% increase. Same data that you have in your books from last time. And
So nothing's changed on that?
yeah,
budget?
we made the decision last night to remove the grade 6 computers at this time, and we want to sit down and talk with the administration about what's our overall philosophy, how are we integrating in the classroom, what measurements are we using, what outcomes are we looking for. That's pretty much
And I'm sure
main.
you guys are obviously evaluating the impact that these Chromebooks and so on have had so far on the current grades, right?
Right. And so we really just want to understand, when you go to grade 6 and you do a modified program where the kids don't take the Chromebooks home, but they're using them in the classroom, what are you looking for in curriculum development there? How are you looking to change things, and how are we measuring that? So they are doing some surveys right now in grades 7, 8, and doing some data accumulation on that. I know Mr. Chauvet's, pulling that together, and I'm sure he talked to you about that a bit. So I have a lot of confidence that we'll get some good information on that. We realized last night, or were told last night, that our adequacy, our grant funding that's coming in, is going to be $130,000 lower than it has been in the past. So we're looking at that, trying to understand some of those impacts as well. I think that's pretty much.
On the default budget, I can't remember if the numbers we had included the kindergarten midday bus runs and whether that got adjusted.
The default budget does have the kindergarten midday in it, I believe.
Yeah, that
And
was put back in because of the fact that if the town votes, chooses the default budget, then they have to get rid of full day kindergarten, and you're going back to midday buses.
well, it should be from the packet last. Didn't they put that in the packet last time? Let me see.
I just wasn't sure if it had been updated with the new numbers that we got from Dale, or if it was based on the old.
Okay, so last night the board did, thank you, the board did vote to accept the Dale proposal. We did have a conversation with them. And so where we left that is, we are putting the money in for that proposal. And we're going to be waiting for the transportation committee to work with them on the contract itself and see how that plays out. So that's where that one is sitting. We looked at our tax rate again last night with the changes that were made. And it looks like we're gonna be at 1583. And the overall would be at 1807. That includes the state education rate. That would be $1.81 estimated increase at this time. And in terms of the budget itself, we added in the amounts for the transportation contract bid. just to have that in there. We added in the Dover tuition increase that came in at 5.86. We are asking them to come to see us about that because of the contractual piece. I'm sure you've had the discussion. I don't believe that, I know the cap was a big conversation and it was a big voting point, but since we had the contract, we've always had numbers that were higher than 4. And the only thing we can do about it is to say we're gonna tail out our students, which we have a good school there, we like it, and so we think we just need to work with them on that percentage. So, they'll be coming in. And I think that was about it for the changes. So we're sitting at slightly over 5% right now with an increase, even taking out the money for the computers. And we were close to the number with the default budget. We're within $35,000 at this point of the default budget. So. And you're saying you don't have from the last?
No, I wasn't here last
Oh,
week.
well, I can share this with you.
Is that your only one?
Yeah.
I have a full set for me.
Oh, you-
Oh, okay. All right, you can keep it.
Can I ask a question about just one budget item? And I apologize for not asking it last week. I think I just worn down. But that community services budget, it was $1,500 a year, and they haven't been using it, so now it's $1. And it's like
It's just to maintain the line. So if you zero it out, then that item number and that line, that category disappears.
right. Well, I understand why the $1's in there, but the decrease bothers me because it's showing that community services is not a priority.
What was the line again? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm sorry, it's 5592.
What page are you?
I'm looking at the
You're looking at the summary sheet?
summary sheet. Yeah.
So let me just take a quick look at the 559.
Like, your budget reflects your priorities, so it seems to me that schools have very little priority for teaching the kids about community services.
No, that's not, I'm trying to find this line, but I think overarching what happened was, we were very concerned, and I was particularly concerned about executive function skills, and working with our students around time management, around planning, scoping a project, those kinds of things, because those are the skills that you start to see come under stress with kids as they move to the next level, to middle school and to high school. And then when kids are coming under stress, it starts rolling into some of these other problems and behaviors that you're seeing around drinking and alcohol and so forth. So we had put a line in that we wanted to utilize to do community outreach. And we did several programs of community outreach all through 3 districts. Nottingham put 2 in place that we held, and those are out on the website. So we had the funds sitting there, and we put it in the school board area because we wanted to be able to do something if we needed to. So we had that sitting there. But we also had added it to the guidance counseling area so that they could infuse it with curriculum and work it there. So that is why the school board area, if I'm doing this now from memory, but if that's the line that we said, okay, we think we're okay, the school board doesn't need that like emergency line to step in, but they still have it and it's still fully funded with the guidance counselors, and we're saving money by sharing it with the other 3 districts. So we're having 2 programs that are coming up in the next month or so, and we'll send that to you guys so you can see it. But we are definitely still pursuing those kinds of things. And in terms of like community service, we have our kids going out to the luncheon for the senior citizens. They did that just in the last couple of weeks.
Yesterday.
Yep. They, were you?
lunch?
Yep. So they go and they help with that. They handed out baskets. They went around and handed out baskets. They work on food banks and loading food in and things like that. So we definitely do implement a community service aspect.
Very good.
They do that coastal cleanup one in the
Yeah,
fall
on the
too,
ocean.
They do the beach.
as a
cleanup.
field trip. And then I think, aren't the eighth graders required to do community service hours this year?
The eighth graders are gonna be working on community service hours this year, yes. And then when they get to high school, they have requirements slightly differing for each school, but, they
Yeah,
definitely
they're
have
both
those.
required,
They
both
both-
schools require them to do community service.
Yeah, so they're
It's
definitely,
something that's ingrained into them.
right, and they've been having, field trips around it, and they've also had, people coming in and talking to them. They just have one, the theme is kindness, treating others with kindness, treating people well. So we do have money definitely infused for that, and just things that we do in terms of volunteering and the kids sign up for. In fact, they had so many kids that wanted to do it, they had to do a lottery, to go around with the baskets and everything.
Wow.
So,
That's the spirit of the season.
yeah, so that's what my memory is on I'm not sure of the exact line, but there were two, and we lowered one under the school board.
If you see these kids walking around with the "Dude Be Nice" T-shirts, that's part of the.
Dude, be
part
nice.
of- Dude Be Nice, yeah, it's part of the program.
I like it.
There's a bunch of other things that they're doing, so
Yeah.
it's worthwhile. And that what was that boy that came in last year and talked about his drug addiction?
Yeah, we had a person that came.
Alex,
Alex's-
Alex's story, that's what it
Yeah.
was, yeah.
And that came in partially through Plymouth State, and we have Plymouth State students that work on things of that nature to come into schools, and they come into our school to work with kids on community service type things and awareness about that. So, yeah, we definitely had that, and then we had, I can't remember her name right now, but a woman that came in who's a PhD and talked about all of the executive function skills and the time frames and how the brain develops and what you can do with your kids, and we really want that. And we're gonna be having Judge Broderick coming in, talking about his experience in his family, that's coming up in the next month. So we're definitely trying to work with parents to be able to identify signs of alcohol or drug use, and also provide skills and services to help with that.
Very good.
And the kids are definitely going out and doing community service.
All right, thank you.
Great.
Actually, is another community service item that just came to mind, the selectmen's meeting Monday. In fact, Charlie had one for me, the Nottingham Rec made Christmas cards for all the veterans in town. So, I mean, they're getting it other places too besides school. So,
Good.
I thought that was really, really nice, so. In fact, I had my card right here in front of me for the whole meeting.
Yeah, I know Charlie was pretty excited about it,
Yeah.
having the opportunity to be the one to give those out.
Yep.
It's great. Did we want to review the default budget? I mean, the default budget to me is pretty straightforward as far as, it's last year's budget minus one-time expenses from last year, and then adding any contractual obligations that were required by the contracts and so on. So I don't have any questions regarding that budget.
Susan, you mentioned that there's a difference of how much? between the default?
35,000?
The default, it's about 35,000 right now.
35,000 less than the proposed budget.
Yes.
Can you just clarify again, if we ended up with a default budget, to what extent can the school reallocate money within that budget?
We discussed that last night, and essentially, we do have line item authority. We just cannot overexpend the bottom line. So we could conceivably take the dollar value that comes in the default budget and completely, we'll have to do our contractual obligations, but we could make other changes to drive the things that we're trying to drive. So we do want to drive that kindergarten initiative. It's a possibility that's the big thing that we probably lose if we got a default budget. But yet again, we can go back line by line and make adjustments.
Because the one that I think we mentioned, I don't think you were here, was for the kindergarten, could you move that midday bus run money towards one or two paras? I don't know if it covers two, but,
There are,
because that was the para costs would not be in the default.
correct.
Because those are new positions.
We could, there are things that we can do, definitely. We have complete, I mean, we could just take our budget as it stands, take that default budget and look at the bottom line and say, that's what we have, here's the contract stuff, and then do whatever we want, as long as we have a line with a dollar value on it. It can't be zeroed out, so that's why you run with those $1. And it actually, I think even if the function code has some dollars in it, you can use it. So it would be an undertaking, but
Is that a new interpretation of how the default budget can be spent? That wasn't my understanding.
yeah, I mean, you don't have to do it,
Indicated.
yeah, you don't have to do it line by line.
Well, I knew that,
But
but that you couldn't move ahead the programs that you were hoping to achieve with your new budget.
we could, and that's our understanding of it. We discussed it last night, and basically, the no means no concept. If you didn't get your budget, then you're living with your default. But the bottom line is really there, and the governing body has discretion between the lines. If we were to put something on a warrant article and it did not pass, then we have no ability to do that for a year. So,
Thanks.
All right. Thank you for that. We want to go into approval of the minutes for December 14th. Take a few minutes to read through that, and yeah, I didn't. I read right past that.
Totally.
I feel like there's more people here. Where I'll add them.
I just had on line 10, director who is trying, a director who is attending to try,
To try to.
supposed to be attempting to try to provide. It should be attempting and then to try, and then the word to is missing.
yeah, or just maybe even who is attending to provide the answers, because he's the expert on the curriculum piece.
But is it attempting or,
I thought he was attending to provide. We wanted to bring him in so that you could have that,
oh, okay.
have his
Attending.
expertise on that area.
Oh, he was attending the meeting, gotcha.
Yeah, he was, yeah, attending to
Yeah.
provide.
All right. regarding some of these notes, did you all receive Jackie Snow's email? All right. Line 93, in the middle, and that it is trying to utilize a methodical plan.
If you go back up to 47, I think for preschool, it's not that they have to be 4. It actually, as soon as they turn 3, or even like 2 and 8 months or something, they can start attending. So students can come in mid-year once they turn 3. You have it in there that they can only attend when they're 4.
So as students can only,
I think you want to take the only out, can attend when they turn, I don't know, Sue, if you know if it's 3 or it's actually 2 and half or something like that. Right, for special education,
Right,
they
for
can start.
yeah, you have to do child find, and they go out to look for students. We have 3 and 4-year-olds, but I think some of them, the 3s can start if there's a cutoff.
They age
a
out
little
early
early.
intervention at age 3, so usually there's a transition period as they approach their 3rd birthday.
The point he was making is if they turn 3 mid-year, they can start mid-year.
Yes,
So it's not
they
that
can
they
go
have
in
to be
anytime.
3 in September.
Right, yep, so there's a lot of influx in there, I think.
so typical students are at age 4?
I think all kids can do
I think it's
3 and
3.
4.
Okay. So if it reads, as students can attend when they turn age 3.
Yeah.
Period?
Yeah, I think that's better.
Line-
On line 168, it says, Mr. Keister asked to receive a 5-year average of the number of students moving in and out. I think what I was asking for was a 5-year history rather than an average. So I remember it.
It's not an average that we're seeing the first draft of, it's in, out, in, out.
Yeah, the histories that we can see, really highs and lows more than average.
Right, you wanna see the real numbers, not an average of it.
Thank you.
Line 119, Ms. Snow stated in some cases, I think it's supposed to be it is. So is it, it's inverted. Should be it is better. Time and cost management.
Reverse the
Yeah.
Just a very small thing, on 241, at that time, the transportation bid had not been selected yet. It was recommended by the transportation committee, but the board had not voted on that yet. Instead of selected, maybe say recommended.
Read that line again, sure.
241.
Was selected by the transportation committee?
Or recommended, they recommended it.
Transportation bid recommended by the transportation committee was the less expensive of the two bids, right?
Anybody have any other changes? Dates? Do I have a motion to accept the minutes of December 14th, 2017 as amended?
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Abstain.
All right.
Can I ask, would it be helpful to have the proposed minutes emailed to us before the meeting? Because, you know, we're sitting here looking at 15, 20 minutes, dead time on the TV.
I've got 5 days to do them. Well, yes, it would be ideal if I could. Unfortunately, it's trying to get these done in addition to all the other stuff that takes place at the end of the year. This is probably my busiest time, prepping the calendars and everything else for everybody else, in addition to all of this. My duties go beyond just being the secretary for the budget committee. So sometimes it's just a time issue, and I don't get them done until right before the meeting, so.
Yeah. So, I know earlier meetings where we had a little more time in between meetings, sort of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we were definitely getting them several days in advance, almost a week in advance, so that was helpful, but, yeah, thank you for all your hard work, so I appreciate it.
Don wears many hats.
Yes. All right, other business, Michael, did you wanna
Just
talk about
briefly,
CIP?
the capital improvement plan committee met, about 5:30 this afternoon, and it's, the plan is still a work in process. And it's getting close to being finalized. There's some things that are still being adjusted. Chris is working through a few of the changes that we discussed tonight, and is putting those together. When he sends that out to me, hopefully within the next week or so, I will be sure to forward email copy of all those documents to everyone here. It's interesting reading. One thing that you've probably seen in years past is a page that shows a graph of what the capital improvements plan is gonna cost for each of the years in the next 7 or 8 years, I guess. And one of the things that I picked up on and asked the committee if they thought it might be something worth doing something about is there's a couple of spikes, one occurring in 2020 and one in 2023. And when I say spikes, I'm talking about a $200,000 difference between prior and subsequent years. Not a huge thing in terms of, you know, when you're talking about, and there will be an operating budget outside of capital expenses, which may wash the whole thing apart. But if you're concerned about the operating budget, and then you've also got the warrant articles related to capital improvement plan also hitting that same year where you've got a tough time with the operating budget, a spike is not a good thing to be experiencing then. That could have been prevented if there was some additional planning prior to that could have leveled out that. So we talked about what we might do at least to level out that 2020. And because it appeared that with the fire department's request for the breathing apparatus, is it the one that was coming up?
Yeah.
No, that's 2018. Do you remember what-
Half of the breathing apparatus is in this
2018, 2019.
2018, 2019, right.
Right, but the spike occurred in 2020.
Is that when they finally expend, well, no, because they've got the
No.
capital reserve.
No, that wasn't the driver there. I think it was a combination of things, and part of it might have had to do with the road department's equipment expenditures. But anyway, we talked about the possibility that if you look at the road department's capital reserve fund for their equipment, we're putting in $75,000 a year for that. And you look at the expenditures that are projected in the next 5, 6, 7 years, it's not gonna cover it. 75,000 is not gonna get them where they need to be just from capital reserve funds. So we thought that maybe if the select board were to review that and maybe go along with adding another 50,000 to next year's capital reserve fund contribution, and maybe 75,000 more to the 2019 capital reserve contribution to that highway department equipment fund, that would inflate the next couple of years and make that spike go down as a result of taking care of that in advance. So something for them to discuss and see if that's something they want to do to take care of.
So you said,
Alleviate the impact, basically. Make it small impact, small increments versus one big one 3 years down the road.
so you said, you suggested 50,000 in the 2018 budget, and then 75 the next 2 years after?
No, just the next year after.
Oh, okay.
Just to get that fund up a little bit so that
Yeah.
their equipment could be purchased more from capital reserve funds than from tax impact in 2020.
Okay.
Is there any way of adjusting what the warrant article is for this year, rather than, so you're looking at 125 next year, and then 150?
That was my proposal, and whether that's something that the,
Maybe level that out so that, it's, 100 and, maybe 125?
Well,
Start using it this year?
I made that just looking at the graph, seeing that this year the graph is showing about $1,050,000 for 2018. And this is just capital improvement plan stuff. In 2019, it's more like $1,010,000. So I figured that if we put in a little bit more in 2019,
Right.
then the capital reserve program would have a more consistent flow across the next 3 years by hitting the first two a little bit harder.
Yeah, but then you still got the sticker shock 2 more years out. Is there any way you can do that?
No, because the costs that they incur could be paid from the capital reserve fund balance at that point, and as opposed to being,
So you're banking the money ahead of time to cushion the blow later.
so there
Then
wouldn't
you,
be,
then you deplete that, and then basically you're starting your cycle again. So after that, you've got a new vehicle, and then you, or whatever it is, you start new, and then you start rebuilding that fund so that 5 years
Right,
down the
this
road,
year.
you replace that next vehicle.
So the number that you're talking about is for the capital reserve fund, putting money in there. So this year we're putting in 75.
that's what we
Yeah.
have scheduled to do for,
He was suggesting increasing
Consistent.
that for 2018.
Yes.
So this
yes.
warrant- the
So
warrant article.
125 next year, and then to
Yep.
150 the following year.
correct.
So you're essentially doubling it in 2 years, in a 2-year period, right? It's
Just
going
for
from
those 2 years,
75.
yeah, just to give it a jump start on
Yeah.
what's gonna be coming
Right.
in
And I'm
expenditures.
just wondering, if we have the warrant article and it's not set in stone, is there anything we can do this year so that in 2 years we're not doubling it? You know
I mean, for the 2017 budget year? That was already,
It's 2018.
well, that's what he's
What he's
talking
saying
about,
is-
for
Oh,
2018, to add 50,000.
Oh, just-
For this 2018 budget that we're working on now.
So that would be 125,000.
Yeah,
My apologies, I had the
Yeah.
years mixed up. I thought we
That's
were assuming that this was set and then next year would be the next financial budget committee.
Oh, right.
Got it, Mike, thank you.
Now, keep in mind that the monies that are contributed to the capital reserve funds are part of what we're totaling up to be that year's total capital fund, I'm sorry, not capital fund, but capital improvement cost includes contributions to the capital reserve funds.
I was thinking of it over a 3-year period to get us to
We really don't have 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Was it noted what the big purchase was in 2020? Was it like another grader or
It's-
something?
It's in here somewhere. It's about
It's in that
13
chart.
13 pages of,
Fire truck. Things are expensive.
I know the fire department had some things going on in 2020.
Where's that?
The school does too.
Oh, this is 2016, don't even look at this. That doesn't count. That's an old page.
Is that it right there? 2020, so you got projected balance, expense of
No, those- those are
270,000,
the-
but it
those
doesn't
are-
say
those are
what.
the- those are-
New lease debt?
That would be the grader? That looks like a grader. 2007, 270,000. Yeah.
270,000.
That is for the grader with plow.
Yeah.
Yeah, in 2020, there's a scheduled $270,000 purchase for a new grader. And that's kind of a big hit. So,
But we just redone the
Engine,
common rate of
yeah.
32 or 33,000.
Yeah, it's a few years old.
it's really
It's-
old.
it's-
It-
Yeah, it's
It's
definitely
falling
old.
apart, that's why we had
But who
to,
knows, if we pave the roads, we won't need grader.
yeah.
They're not gonna pave all the roads. Some of us need the
I know,
grader.
I'm just kidding.
There'll always
I'm
be a
just
dirt
kidding.
road
And
somewhere.
that
Some
grader's
of our
been
roads
around
aren't navigable
since
without
2006.
graders.
That's an 11-year-old grader.
I was
according
just
to this
kidding.
chart.
Voting for that.
Really? Yeah, wow. Yeah,
You'd think they'd last longer made of steel up there,
like a tank. And
but they hit big rocks.
How many years do they have it in there? 10? No. 20 to,
2006 to 2021.
okay.
So they're looking for a 15-year lifespan on that, and they almost got it.
It's,
It had to
these
be,
things take a lot of wear
it had
and
to be
tear.
limped
so-
along.
yeah, they take a beating.
Yeah. All right. Any other,
Lift that blade up a little bit.
any other big things come up on the CIP meeting?
They had a conversation with the fire chief ahead of time regarding his plan for engine 3. Engine 3 is the one that they're going to be replacing in this coming year. Is that correct? I don't know exactly what question was answered with that, but I know that was part of the discussion before I came in. Anything else of consequence? Well, we talked a little bit about the impact fees and what can and can't be spent from them, for what purposes those impact fees can be spent. And one of the questions I asked was if we could identify that it was people moving into town, into these new homes for which impact fees were being paid, that was causing the high school tuition line to go up. I was told, no, that can't be used, it has to be for capital projects, not tuition.
It has to be, yeah.
Incurred
anything
by
that impacts the entire community, not just.
The building, that creates a space issue in the building that we need to,
So, for example, the school is talking about, in the very near future, maybe year after next, putting in a modular classroom to accommodate some of the space for the kindergarten and/or world language programs. This is
well,
looking-
one thing that, around that whole space thing, I really think, a couple of things I noticed in the minutes, and I wasn't here, so I'm gonna just go with it, but, from grade 4 up to grade 8, that's where our spike is right now in enrollment. And those students moving in, we are going to be becoming an increasingly higher percentage of both of the high schools, obviously, compared to what we have today, because we have 71, 72, 69, all of our bigger grades are there. I don't know what will happen with kindergarten coming in. We have 38 right now. I don't know what will happen with these new subdivisions that have come in. We had talked about putting a modular in order to do the programming that we would like to do around STEM, around, you know, the new laws that have come into play, or one of them that indicates that STEM services need to be provided K through 8 now and 12. Whereas before it didn't start quite as early, so it's the programming that is causing the crunch in our school. So we had talked about potentially doing some sort of build or putting a modular in, as you say, for world language or what have you. But the other thing that I did notice is, if we have classes that are smaller than 50, we have 3 classrooms per grade now, and those 3 classrooms per grade were done because we needed to do that. But it's not set in stone, and it shouldn't harm anybody's educational experience if you have 38 students and you do 2. And that opens up a lot of real estate in the building, because there's a room now opened up. And it, you know, that particular teacher that may be displaced by that, we could look back at our total population of 24 teachers and say, do we have a teacher here? We could take this kindergarten or first grade or what have you, put them here, and then have another teacher come out and be trained to do the math specialist that we had talked about earlier in the year, but we didn't want to do another hire. So we could make some changes that enhance the building and use our personnel in areas that are needed. So we could hold steady those costs on personnel, and we could employ a world language because we have a classroom. And of course, you can always change as we go, back to 3 if we need it, if we have an infusion of kids. So I'm kind of leaning toward that. I know it may not sound popular, but we currently have 3 per grade because the need was there. But I think we can be flexible also and look at the needs of 511 students or 525, whatever it may be that particular year, and say, well, world language would benefit all of them. We're going to make this class of 38 2 rooms, and we're going to take that other room and make world language. So maybe we wouldn't need the new modular. Also, the same thing with kindergarten. We decided to forge ahead because we currently have 38 in kindergarten. We're thinking it might be, you know, similar. So we think we can do kindergarten with the 2 paraprofessionals in the 2 rooms that we have, based on some of the changes that we made, the physical changes that we made to the building a year or 2 ago, to try to. So we are tight in terms of how we're programming. We're always knocking down walls and trying to do the best we can with what we have. But if our enrollment starts to decline, then we can start to look at other ways to work within the school. So that's, I'm hoping, I wouldn't mind having a modular either, but I'm hoping that we can maybe make the school work as it is. And then if we see that infusion from the new subdivisions, talk about it regularly and, you know, and have a plan in place. And that's what we're going to be talking about at our next meeting. Do we need a modular, or do we want to try to do some sort of stick-built, you know, early learning center? What would it be? What does it look like? What do the people in the town want? Do we bring our preschool kids back and do an early childhood center? So there's a lot to think about.
Yeah, the challenge is in order to utilize the impact fee monies, of which we have accumulated a fair bit now, and some will be expiring.
About 13,000, yes.
Yeah. If it's held without being used for a certain period of time, then it goes back to the property owner that had to pay them in the beginning. But the rules for using it are really pretty restrictive, and effectively it has to be a capital grounds improvement that is to accommodate additional people having been caused by this new housing. So
What about for paving the roads? Does it have to be a road that is connected to that particular development, or the fact that more people use Ledge Farm Road now than they used to, just because it's a
I don't know about that.
bypass?
Yeah,
Or is it
the
strictly
impact
tourism?
fees are not specifically earmarked for school only. You're absolutely right. Fire department.
Police.
You have to increase your
Police
your
department.
fire rescue services to accommodate the additional population. That's certainly something that they look at to see if they can use some impact fees there.
Did it go towards a new fire truck?
The apparatus too, the tanks.
If you can somehow justify that you are adding to your fleet,
Yeah, it can't go towards
it's not a replacement.
replacement of an existing vehicle. Can't be used for that.
Has to be a
So,
new.
but in the end.
Has to be a
so
new
in the instance
purchase.
of, like the police department, if we needed an extra cruiser, then it
Yeah, I
wouldn't be to
think-
replace a cruiser, but it would be to add an
Right.
employee or add a cruiser or
We
something.
needed to add a fifth cruiser to accommodate increased patrols,
Right.
then that would be something that you could earmark
So it all has to be earmarked towards something growth.
to accommodate growth,
Personnel, the extra police officer in the department.
possibly.
Not for us, but maybe for,
Yeah,
maybe for you,
Possibly.
I don't know.
Yeah.
For us, it has to be kind of a capital improvement as defined by that, and we need to have it on
So
the
it can't
capital.
it can't be a teacher.
No,
It has to be physical aspect to the building.
yeah, as a matter of process, we need to put it on the capital reserve plan, and then we go before the planning board, and they have to, approve that in concept, because they own the impact fee ordinance.
Right.
And then if it's approved there, then it goes to the select board, and they make the decision to, move the funds.
So what about these, so you're saying, and we're about to lose $13,000?
Roughly.
Wouldn't that go towards converting the library into a modular space in order to add, basically, add more space for students to study and to do work and to have these hands-on,
Right, maybe the furniture to accommodate more people within the space.
Right, so those are the things that we're gonna be examining, and everything we do, we have to run by the attorneys to make sure they feel that it conforms. The most recent use that we had was the space study that we had, and we went before the planning board on that, and we had the attorneys weigh in, and they felt that it was acceptable use. I think you've had some pushback at the BOS, we haven't heard anything yet about it, so, but my thought on it too is that we have these spikes in the middle school. And the middle school is having problems accommodating within the classroom, some of the things they need because they have so many kids in these classrooms, from fourth grade really up. So I would like to kind of dissect it in that way too and say, look at it, and we may need to expand some areas in the middle school to accommodate these kids. We don't have the benches in the labs to accommodate that many kids in a classroom. We don't have sinks in our sixth grade classrooms to accommodate the number of children, again, using science and doing science in those rooms. There's no sink or any place to, and I guess it's okay when kids, classroom's smaller and the kids can use the bathroom, but now you get a bigger classroom and you have this need again. So we're trying to figure out what that means. Kindergarten, I think, could be a little bit of an issue for us, because right there, we're at 38, and that's not showing an increase. So I think it's gonna be harder for us to try to do a building for kindergarten, because it's not increasing. But we are seeing the increase on the other sides, and I think it's when the current subdivisions, people moved in, their kids are now just, you had that bottleneck of kids coming in, obviously they've gone through K through 3, but they didn't have the program needs. So we can't do it to drive a program, but if the space is not sufficient, then you can. So, it's difficult, but we're trying to make sure that we're pristine in how we approach it.
The reason that the capital improvement program was even discussing the impact fee situation was that if you have other sources of revenue that provided for these improvements, then it's not a hit to the taxes. So we could reduce that spike a little bit for those sorts of reasons, if we could find ways to assign other kinds of revenues toward that. But it doesn't appear that the modular classroom is gonna be, have that potential. Unless they can really figure out how to make it fit in the criteria.
Yep.
Anyway, the committee has pretty much wrapped up what they were charged to do, and aside from Chris putting the changes into the new documents and preparing a document for the town report, we're essentially done. We haven't got any future meetings scheduled, but it's an ongoing effort, and it's very interesting to be a part of, and I'd recommend anybody who wants to do it next year, I would help you get up to speed with it, but it's good stuff.
Well, thank you for sitting in on that meeting and bringing us all that info. So definitely some interesting stuff going on there. All right, the last order is roundtable. Any other topics or subjects that anybody needs to address or bring up? The only thing I have is we're scheduled for January 4th for the final review of the school budget. And then I think we have the public hearing and then the second draft of the town budget. Is that the meeting where we have the fire department and the police department come in, or is that
The January 25 meeting.
the January 25 meeting?
That's
Yes.
the second draft of the town budget.
Yeah.
Yep. And you will have, Chris will more than likely do an overview of any changes that have taken place.
Right.
Between a week ago and then any department that you wanna meet with. So if it's fire, police, the library, it's usually the larger departments that you guys have met with.
I think those are the only three we met with last year, right?
Last year,
Tony, do you remember?
yeah, Rec was
Would you
here.
meet with?
Oh,
them?
Rec was there, that's right. Because they had that
Library
big,
come in last
the
year?
big fund question of what
Yes.
was gonna happen with all that money.
So, I mean, if you guys wanna take a look
asking you.
at the budget over the next couple of weeks, and then on the 4th, just kind of make some decisions, because your meeting after that is a tentative as well. Because if you know, I mean, you certainly don't wanna have 5 department heads here all
Yeah,
on the same night, because it will make for a very, very long night.
Yeah, we don't wanna do that, I don't
So
think.
3, I think, usually is better than max. I mean, if you know you only want to see 4, Chris would probably ask the department heads to stick to the major points. And then it would be the question and answer session, and then you guys could have a forum the same night.
So who do you wanna see?
It doesn't seem like Rec has had any big budget issues at this point.
No, I think, I was here on Monday for the Board of Selectmen's meeting. They did put in a request to spend some nominal fees or whatever to upgrade some equipment. in
Toddler
order to-
gym, yeah,
in
it's
order
already
to,
here.
It's already here?
It's in the office. Yeah.
Wow, that was quick. So yeah, so they've made some expenses there, just to upgrade and update some of the equipment that they had in order to attract more kids and provide better services. So, they've been doing quite well and from what I've seen anyway, so.
Yeah.
And, so we definitely wanna have the police department, obviously, the fire department. And I think if we do 2 in a night, and then if we decide that, well, and then the library, and I think those would be the 3 at this point in time. And the library is pretty short.
I don't think they've got a lot of big changes proposed. You are still welcome to have them, you know, if you've got any concerns. I think what I'll.
Can they,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, could they possibly send us, just a write-up of what their proposed changes and plans are for the year and what their budget is gonna be, and then we can, you know, you email it to us, we can take a look at it, and then if we have questions, then we'll ask them to come in. But-
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I got their preliminary numbers. So typically, Peter, for you, especially since you're new, and Carol and Aaron, for you, the budget committee really has very little say for the library budget. They present it, you kind of say yes or no as an overall number. And so that's where when you look at the big budget, when you're looking here, you're only seeing 4 accounts. They usually work really closely with the town administrator as far as salary increases, but it's the trustees. The trustees meet, they set their budget, and they present the number. And so what they have been giving us is their more detailed breakdown of what they propose for books and materials, cleaning contracts, building maintenance, those kinds of things.
Computer
So
stuff,
I can send you guys that, and it will give you a better idea of where their money is going.
Yeah,
But you don't have a lot of say, sadly.
yeah, so let's do it that
That's
way,
good.
because I think that'll be easier, yeah.
Can I add that one thing that is coming up, if not this coming year, but very soon, is a fairly big expense on the lift in the building.
elevator lift thing.
Yeah. And also, it might be worth considering having the library come make the presentation, just because we have a new librarian, and it might.
New director,
Oh, that's
and a new
true,
director
yeah.
That might wanna, you know, become part of this
Yeah.
process.
But if we can get that information beforehand, then we don't, you know, it'll make the whole process a lot faster for everybody, I think, so.
And Chris always comes up with a summary of highlights
Right.
that you'll get in advance, and I know last year I actually used that as a guideline for
To go through the.
my synopsis during the public hearing, so that'll be good material for you to use in
Yeah.
preparing for that.
Definitely. All right. Let's plan on that. Perfect.
So police, fire, library,
You don't have anybody in the highway to present.
Not yet.
Chris,
Chris,
Chris will probably, he'll probably cover that.
And Chris can cover, I know we had the recycling center come in and present. I'm sure Chris can cover all of that.
that eventually will be the DPW
Yeah,
when they get
Exactly.
there, so it's not now.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
all right.
If you know anybody, have them send a resume.
Yeah, right. That is all I have for today.
I have a couple quick.
Yes.
The high school enrollment, I guess we talked about. I just wanted to reiterate, though, when we're looking at this, we've got a 5.8% increase out of Dover, and we had budgeted for 4, and we also have a 3.5 increase for the one-to-one students. And we do have enrollment, obviously, at higher enrollment numbers, and I think Co-Brown came in at 3.8 or 3.9. So what we're really, I think, gonna have to try to explain to the community is that the costs are one thing, but it's also just the fact that this higher enrollment is gonna be ongoing for the next several years. We're gonna have to find a way as a board to plan for this, and the other thing is, on January 8th, we'll be having a joint school board meeting. I chair that board. We moved the meeting up. Our financials are complete. Our SIU financials are in draft form, so we're finalizing the surplus number sitting at the SAU for the preschool and the SAU itself. We're coming in around 600 right now or so, and it's something that's going to be talked about at that January 8th meeting, and a vote will be taken as to how to work with that. So that's something I think that is important. I know in terms of cash flow, the SAU likes to have that, so that if their timing on their grant money and so forth is problematic, they can use that to manage their cash flow, but I'm inclined to work on some cash flow management and work with our treasurers and see how we can handle that, and keep a nominal amount there and bring those funds back, because I don't really feel as though, we'll see what the board says, but I think when voters vote on budgets, they assume those are going to operating costs and not necessarily going to be held back for cash flow purposes. And then the other piece I forgot to mention, we did talk with Dale about the increase that they were showing, and it's primarily relating to some double-digit increases that they had to do around salaries because of the nationwide issue and being competitive to get drivers. We were without a driver for our pink bus for better part of last year and into this year. We did have a new bus driver that got trained and started, and unfortunately, we lost our blue bus driver. That individual moved away. So we're back to square one, and this has been this has been happening for a year, so that's that.
We have no substitute bus drivers?
No, they do not, they do not.
You're retired.
On purpose.
All right.
Thanks for the thought.
Well, thank you all for coming, and obviously if there's anything that comes up between now and the next meeting, shoot me or Dawn an email, and we'll make sure that they get addressed. And voila. Do I have a
Motion to adjourn.
second?
Second.
All in favor? Thank you very much. Have a great Christmas,
Happy
everybody.
holidays.
Yes.
Oh, Gail.